What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be listing my top 5 MMA fighters of all time. Now, this is not UFC. We are talking top 5 MMA fighters of all time. Now, for people who don't understand or don't get the concept, mixed martial arts is the sport of fighting. Like, it's kind of how it sounds. You're mixing boxing with, Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or freestyle wrestling, Greco Roman wrestling. It's taking every combat sports and you're training them all together and kind of like into one sport. And whenever I mention MMA, because I'm on social media a lot and I talk about I follow a lot of MMA social media pages and I say like who's the best MMA fighters of all time, and people always list UFC fighters. I said MMA. There's more than just UFC. There's UFC, Bellator, there was PFL, WSOF, there was Cage Warriors. There was a Pride, K1, which is kickboxing, I believe. The Dream. There was a lot of combat sports. So there's more than just UFC. And today I'm going to list my top 5 mixed martial artists in MMA history, and it's going to be quite a long video because there's a lot of hit the wrong button, sorry. There's going to be quite a lot of information to talk about. And starting at number 5 is Jose Aldo. Now, people, if you're an MMA fan, you will understand why I'd put Jose Aldo at the 5. Putting him on this list was tough because there's a lot of great MMA fighters in MMA history. But we're going to go through the reasons why he's on this list and like his achievements and his accomplishments and what he's done in his MMA career. And we're gonna just get straight into it. He has seven successful title defenses in the UFC. Interim UFC featherweight champion, most successful title defenses in UFC history, most consecutive title defenses in UFC featherweight history, most title defenses in UFC featherweight history, and he was a champion in another MMA promotion called uh, WEC, and he was the featherweight champion in WEC with 2 successful title defenses. He was the youngest champion in WEC history at 23 years old in 70 days. He has the most consecutive wins in WEC history. I think it's between 6 to 9, 7 to 11. It's one of those two. But when I think of what makes an MMA fighter really great is to be on this list, you have to be a champion in more than one MMA promotion. You can't just be like, let's say you go to the UFC and you have like 10 title defenses. That's good. But to be the greatest MMA fighter of all time, what have you done in other combat sports? Like, have you been a Pride champion? Were you a Pride were you a pre-final nationalist champion? Were you a Bellator champion? Were you a UFC champion? There's a lot of things that have to take into consideration when evaluating what makes you a really great MMA fighter and what puts you on this list. Another accomplishment, his MMA record. He has 31 wins and 8 losses. 17 out of the 31 wins were by KO or TKO. One was by submission and 13 by decision. Now, 8 losses isn't bad. 31 wins is really good. And for 10 years straight, he was undefeated until he fought Conor McGregor. But being undefeated in any combat sports for 10 years straight is a great accomplishment. Now, a list of notable great fighters he beat: Cub Swanson, Uriah Faber, Mark Hominick, Kenny Florian, Chad Mendes 2 times, Frankie Edgar 2 times, the Korean Zombie / Chang Sung-jung, Ricardo Lamas, Jeremy Stevens, Marlon Chito Vera, and Pedro Munoz, and lastly, Rob Font. He beat Jose Aldo in his prime, beat some of the best fighters in UFC history. There's Frankie Edgar, Chad Mendes, uh, Pedro Munoz, Uriah Faber, Kenny Florian, Chang Sung Jung, Jeremy Stevens. Great legends, amazing fighters. And Jose Aldo, in my opinion, is definitely top 5 MMA fighters of all time. And at the number 4 spot, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. He deserves to be on this list 100%. And we're going to hop straight into why. We're going to talk about his accomplishments and his achievements. UFC flyweight champion, 11 successful title defenses. He's tied with Jon Jones for the most successful title defenses in UFC history. He has the most consecutive title defenses in UFC flyweight division history, most wins in UFC flyweight title fights, third most wins in UFC title fights, most UFC flyweight title fights. He has the third most finishes in UFC title fights, second most submissions in UFC title fights, UFC flyweight champion, tournament winner, and he was the Asian MMA company champion for one champion. The name of the company is One Champion. They're an Asian based MMA promotion. He was the one champion, well, the one flyweight champion, excuse me, one successful title defense, and he was the 2019 One Championship Flyweight World Grand Prix champion. Moving on to his MMA record, he had 25 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. 5 of those 25 wins were by KO TKO, 8 were by submission, and 12 by decision. Moving on to his list of notable great fighters he's beat. Adrian Moraes, who he beat to become the champion in one champion. And then he beat him twice in a rematch. He beat him by KO the first time flying knee, and then he beat him in a second time by a pretty good decision. He fought Rotang, which was, I know it was a mixed it was like a mixed rules fight, because Rotang, for anyone who doesn't know, Rotang is a really great Muay Thai fighter and one of the best in Muay Thai history. Muay Thai is another combat sport, and I added Rotang on this list because it was a great fight. You got to go watch it. And just another notable name: Ray Borg, Tim Elliott, Henry Cejudo, John Dodson, Joseph Benavidez twice, John Moraga, Ian McCall, and Wilson Reyes. I never understood how you pronounce his name, but Demetrius Johnson definitely deserves to be in the top 5 MMA fighters of all time. Coming in at number 3, Mikro Krokop. Now, he is a legend when it comes to mixed martial arts. As you see right here, he fought in Risen, he fought in K1, world champion, Risen champion. He even fought in the UFC and had good notable wins. Moving on to his accomplishments and achievements, he was the only person to ever win K1, Pride, and Risen Grand Prix championships. He is one of 2 fighters in combat sports and MMA history to win a world championship in mixed martial arts and kickboxing. He is the only mixed martial artist to win 3 world Grand Prix championships, and he was the K1 World Grand Prix 2012 final champion, the Prague, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, but he was the Prague kickboxing 8-man tournament 1997 champion. He was the 2016 Risen World Openweight Grand Prix champion, undefeated in Risen Fighting Federation competition at 6-0, and he was the IGF championship. He had 1 successful title defense, and he was undefeated in IGF competition at 5-0. And he's fought in a lot of combat sports and MMA promotions. He fought in K1, he fought in Pride, Risen, IGF, was it Prague kickboxing, must have over 5 combat sport leagues, you could say, or promotions. Now Mikro Krokop, moving on to his MMA record: 38 wins, 11 losses, 2 draws, and 1 no contest. 30 out of those 38 fights were won by KO/TKO, 4 by submission, and 4 by decision. And moving on to a list of notable great fighters he beat: Roy Nelson, Pat Barry, Hangman Choi, Josh Barnett 3 times, Wanderlei Silva, Mark Coleman, Kevin Randleman. Mikro Krokop was one of the best strikers in MMA history. He had a really good roundhouse, a really good lead roundhouse specifically. He would KO his opponents with it. He's just an amazing, amazing fighter. In my opinion, definitely top 5 MMA fighters of all time. Coming in at the number 2 spot, Alistair Overeem. Alistair Overeem, I was thinking about putting him at number 1, but once you see who's number 1, you'll understand why. Excuse me. You'll understand why Alistair Overeem is number 2. Moving on to his accomplishments and achievements, and he has a lot we're going to name. He was a Strikeforce heavyweight champion with 1 successful title defense. Pride champion. He was 2005 Pride Middleweight Grand Prix semifinalist. He was the Dream Heavyweight Champion. He was too hot. What was it? It's too hot. The 2H. This thing was too hot. I could be wrong, but okay. I think that's the name of it. I promise I didn't forget it. I just forgot the name. Okay, don't judge me. I forgot the name. I put abbreviations because I didn't want the big ass name in big bold letters, but I should have put the name there. Okay, he was too hot. Light heavyweight champion. He was the light heavyweight tournament winner. He is the only fighter to simultaneously hold 3 championship belts in Strikeforce, K1, and Dream. He is one of only 2 fighters to win a world championship in MMA and K1. He is a former Strikeforce heavyweight champion, Dream heavyweight champion, K1 World Grand Prix champion, and was the first fighter to hold titles in MMA and K1 kickboxing at the same time. You know how crazy that is? It's hard enough to become a MMA champion. But while you're MMA champion, you go to K1 kickboxing, which is one of the best kickboxing leagues in kickboxing promotional history. And then you become a champion in K1 kickboxing at the same time that you are MMA champion. I mean, how crazy is that? Overeem is also a one-time challenger for the UFC Heavyweight Championship, and it's crazy how good he was. In his prime, he was one of the best fighters to ever grace the MMA sport. Moving on to his MMA record, 47 wins, 19 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, out of those 47 wins, 25 were by KO/TKO, 17 by submission, and 5 by decision. And moving on to a list of notable/great fighters he beat. Sergey Pavlovich, Fabricio Werdum twice, Mark Hunt twice, Andrei Arlovsky, Junior Dos Santos, Roy Nelson, Stefan Struve, Brock Lesnar, Frank Mir, Gary Goodridge, Vitor Belfort, and Todd Duffy. And when you take a look at this list, he beat some of the best combat sports athletes, some of the best MMA athletes and MMA fighters you can ever think of. He beat Fabricio Werdum. We're talking legends, Junior Dos Santos, Gary Goodridge, Vitor Belfort. There's Brock Lesnar, Mark Hunt, Roy Nelson, Fabricio Werdum 2 times, Mark Hunt 2 times, Andrei Arlovsky. We're talking some of the best MMA and combat sports fighters of all time. It's an amazing list, and in my opinion, he is definitely number 2. And one of the reasons I think he's number 2 and why he deserves the number 2 spot. And look at these accomplishments. He was a champion in Strikeforce, Pride, Dream, 2H, and he is the only fighter to simultaneously hold 3 championship belts in Strikeforce, K1, and Dream. He was a champion in over 4 different combat sport athlete promotions. He is one of only 2 fighters to win a world championship in MMA and K1 kickboxing. Like, that's just crazy in itself. Like, you're the champion of MMA and then you're a champion of K1 kickboxing. The heavyweight division at that time was one of the best heavyweight divisions you could ever see and ever fight, ever watch it. And it's crazy to think that these accomplishments were Alistair Overeem's accomplishments, and he was so good in his prime. Coming in at the number 1 spot, Fedor Emelianenko. Now, sorry for the long pause, thinking, but thinking back on Fedor's greatness and his legacy and his just everything he's done for the sport, he, in my opinion, is the best MMA fighter of all time, and we're gonna hop straight into why. He was Bellator heavyweight Grand Prix finalist. Okay, he was Pride heavyweight champion with 3 successful title defenses. Pride 2004 heavyweight world Grand Prix champion, World Alliance of Mixed Martial Arts heavyweight champ. He competed in Rings, Strikeforce, M1 Global, Risen, Pride, and Bellator. Sorry for the full notification. That's over 6 combat sport promotions, and it's crazy when you think about how good Fedor Emelianenko was in his prime. His MMA record was 40 wins, 7 losses, and 1 no contest. And out of those 40 wins, 16 by knockout / TKO, 15 by submission, and 9 by decision. I mean, that's crazy. Now, a list of notable / great fighters he beat: Gary Goodridge, Mark Coleman 2 times, Kevin Randleman, Mark Hunt, Andre Arlovsky, Tim Silva, Hangman Choi, Pedro Rizzo, Frank Mir, Chael Sonnen, Quentin Rampage Jackson, and Tim Johnson. And these are some legends he beat. We're talking some of the best light heavyweight and heavyweight fighters to ever grace the sport. And Fedor Emelianenko, in my opinion, is the best MMA fighter of all time. And if you just take a look at the list of people he's beat and he's fought. For people who are real MMA hardcore fans, know Mark Coleman, Mark Hunt, Hangman Choi, Quentin Jackson, Chael Sonnen, the undefeated Chael Sonnen. If you're not a fan of Chael Sonnen, you don't get that reference. But Andre Arlovsky, we're talking some of the best in MMA and combat sports history. Fedor Emelianenko is the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And if you feel like my list isn't good, or you have a better list, or you think there's names that should have been added, my original idea for this video was to go top 10. But it's so tough because there's a lot of great MMA fighters. But that's all for today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening and enjoying. Sorry that I'm sick, and sorry that I have a cold. Sorry that I kind of stumble upon my words sometimes. I kind of get nervous when doing these videos, I'm not even gonna lie. Not even just that, but there's so much on my mind that I want to talk about, so I jot them down to these slideshows. Fedor Emelianenko, the greatest MMA fighter of all time. If you disagree, comment down below why, and comment down below your list of top 5 MMA fighters of all time. Spread love, peace, and positivity, and enjoy your night.